Council to order. Good evening. Let's begin with the council prayer. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who served in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Please join me in honoring America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilor Caulfield.
Here.
Councilor Dakota.
Here.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Councilor Martin.
Here.
Councilor Mendonça.
Here.
Councilor Mercia.
Here.
Mayor Milanazzo.
Here.
Councilor Murphy.
Here.
Councilor Broderick.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. First order of business would be to accept the minutes of the May 18th meeting. Motion by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. Under unfinished business, we have a communication from the city manager requesting approval of out-of-state travel. This was actually on the agenda last week, and the manager was going to get a report and bring actually this back to the council, so I'll defer to the manager at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The concerns were raised last week regarding an out-of-state travel with a hotel cost of $250. Looking for the documentation here. I spoke to the police chief about this, and in fact, it was not $250. It was considerably less than that. I believe I was looking for it here. I believe it was more in the vicinity of $150 a night. The expectation was that the agency which was holding the training was going to be paying for all of the costs associated with the conference, and it was a meeting that was held out of state that came as in an unplanned way for the police department, but there were benefits to attending the conference, and it is unusual to bring a request in after the fact. But the decision was made to attend, and with the expectation that it was all going to be paid by the department, by the DEA. So that's why it came in when it did. Actually, the cost of the hotel was $102 per night, so that's why that happened the way it did. But the cost that was put on the original memorandum was incorrect. It was $102 per night.
Council Caulfield.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the chief for sending us a memo. It was a typo.
That's right.
And it was for 2 nights, not 1 night.
Right.
So the vote, Mr. Mayor, is $204.
Correct.
Rather than $250.
Correct. Yes. Anybody else have any comments, questions?
Move approval.
Move approval by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Martin. Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Dakota.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Under the city manager's portion of the agenda, communications, responses to council motions and requests. Anybody have? Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager. Mr. Manager, I did make a motion about a community kitchen, the kitchen garden for the transitional assistant living center. In other words, the shelter. And there's a piece of property which only a very small portion of it is city property, but the rest belonged to a private person who gave them permission to use that, but we needed some help and assistance with the city, and I'm happy to see that the city has assisted the Lowell Transitional Living Center by helping them prepare the site and to move a section of the fence out so that they could get in there. And they're very grateful. I serve the meals there twice a week. And they're very grateful because, and I think it adds a benefit to the neighborhood as well, in that there's not debris thrown out on that empty parcel, and the food that could be generated from planting of crops would benefit the shelter clients anyway. So I'm very happy to see that we have cooperation now we're working on a way to explore to provide access to water, which would be wonderful if we can do that, so they wouldn't have to carry buckets and pails across the street. So whatever we can do to help them, I truly appreciate it, and so far, we have gotten help from the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mercia. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Manager, for furnishing us with this information about the additional bridges that are going to be rebuilt and so forth. And it's quite a list of bridges. We know 495, the state is rebuilding the 3 bridges there and so forth. And the Broadway Street Bridge, which needs rebuilding immensely. But I'm just concerned about the bridge on Pawtucket Street, the one with the New Jersey barriers on it. And, you know, during the cancer walk, there were 3,500 people that walked through that, and they had to go across the street, and there was no way of access to the sidewalk and so forth. That's been like that for years. And is an L gonna, you know, come to the table? And
They are planning on, there's 2 bridges that I know they're planning on working on. One is the Pawtucket Street up by the North Campus of the university, where the students cross there.
Right.
They are planning on replacing that bridge, and they are also working on design plans. I believe we gave a report to the council a while back, and we can pull that back up, but they haven't made any progress, obviously, on doing the work, but they are moving forward, or intending to move forward to do the work at that bridge as well.
Okay. And just one other issue. The communication we received about the flooding in South Lowell, along the Concord River, Baricka Street, and so forth. And in the communication indicated that the Army Corps of Engineers, the motion I filed to bring the Army Corps of Engineers in, and Black Brook was one of those.
Yes.
Have they been contacted yet, or have they shown an interest in coming in? Or?
I believe they have, we've contacted them, and I'll double check on that. I believe we have contacted them. The status of that is they can help us with it's possible they can help us with the analysis.
Right.
They won't be able to help us with the actual construction because it doesn't meet the threshold for that. But again, it's dependent upon the availability of federal funds to fund the analysis work. Again, I believe we've contacted them, but I'll get a status report on that for you, Council.
If they can tell us through the study what should be done, what has to be done, you know, it will help us immensely.
Exactly. That's exactly what the analysis would do. Okay. But again, the requests for these types of studies are, as you would expect, quite a number across the country, and so there's a limit on how many they do, but we'll check and see what the status is on that. In the meantime, we should be doing our own analysis out there to figure out what needs to be done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the same issue that Councilor Caulfield raised about the report from the Mass Department of Transportation, I mean, it's a dozen or more projects here, and so it is encouraging to see all this work that the state is currently undertaking or committed to undertake in the city, and bridges, I think, dominate the list, which is also encouraging to see. You know, the 495 was mentioned, the Quinn Holmes Bridge at Hunts Falls, the University of, which I understand is on track with design. But Mr. Mayor, is there any discussion at all about the Rourke Bridge? I mean, I know of all of them, it's probably the most structurally sound, but it's also, you know, in need of capacity there. And you know, not to, you know, belittle what the state is doing, but that is a glaring need that the city has, and at some point we need to start planning for that. Is that even on anybody's radar screen at Mass Highway or whatever it's known as now?
It's on the radar screen, certainly of the city, and to some extent, certainly with the Wood Street corridor and Drum Hill corridor, the study that's ongoing or moving forward there. I know that Councilor Murphy asked questions regarding or asked for some assistance in getting the state to fund certain aspects of the traffic work that was done there, and we were able to, through efforts of NIMCOG, Councilor Murphy sits on, as well as our City Hall, we were able to get them to come up with the necessary funding to move that project forward. But that project is some years down the road, I would say, but we're continuing to move forward. I think it has to be looked at from a regional perspective because of the service it provides to Drake in Chelmsford as well as the city.
I mean, I guess certainly it's unrealistic to expect anything to happen until the University Ave Bridge is complete, but really, once that's done, I think that really needs to be a major focus of our efforts.
Absolutely, and I think that the land we just obtained from the, or in the process of obtaining from this university can play a role in the relocation of that. There's also land on the the Wood Street side that would make it possible to put a bridge. It would be tight, but it could go in there. The real problem of that bridge is going to be the Wood Street corridor and going all the way up through Drum Hill, because you're taking what would probably be a 4-lane bridge and dumping it into a very tight roadway there. So it will likely require some land takings in the future. So it's going to be that's the challenge that's faced. I know that back in 1983, I want to say, or when it was built or erected, the talk in the early 80s was to move it farther north and have it cut through another part of the city as well as the town of Chelmsford, but that plan never went anywhere, and it ended up where it is. But
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Council Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy that Councilor Martin brought this subject up. And that's my neighborhood. I live in that neighborhood. And first of all, if you put a new bridge up or construct a new bridge, you're not going to take the old Rourke Bridge down because that will cripple the city. And I would estimate, as the manager pointed out, the eminent domain and land takings will probably cost more than the bridge, because I don't know where you would put the bridge, to the left or to the right of well, you can't do that, Walgreens is going there. But the bridge, you'd have to take some expensive property. And as Mr. Manager indicated, this is years down the road.
Thank you. Anything else on the communication? Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Moses provided a report to us regarding the Amoresco contract. Have we signed that contract yet, Mr. Manager? No?
it has not been signed yet.
Okay,
No.
can we just get a copy of it? I appreciate the information. And I was just curious how the $6 million figure to Amoresco came about. Did you take it project by project based upon the work that they're going to perform? I'm talking about the $6 million that they're going to get paid to implement the $21 million contract.
That's each component taken together as a single figure. And remember, 6 different companies bid on this, all submitted pricing as well.
6 companies bid on the energy contract?
That's correct.
Okay, and do we take the low bid, or how did that go about? I don't question the process. I just want to know how we came up with this figure.
Price was a factor, although we considered quite a few things. For example, several of the companies that bid were also manufacturers of equipment, and the panel that reviewed all the proposals debated this at length because, for example, a train makes the equipment. If we went with them, we would be locked in to their line of equipment. And as opposed to a couple of the companies, including Amoresco, that didn't make any of the equipment and committed to buying the best equipment for that particular use. That had a lot of bearing on our decision as well.
Any other information that you could get to me and the council would be appreciated. I'm just not very familiar with this, and I'd like to become familiar, knowing that, it's a big chunk of money, and they're getting paid a lot of money to do it, so knowing, and I think this is new territory, not only for the city, but, performance contracting with energy issues.
It's been used on a number of communities across the Commonwealth and across the country, and quite a number of universities and housing authorities have used this type of, the private sector has been doing it for decades. But it's a fairly common practice by large organizations.
Well, it's,
Council, I'm trying to find that report in here. Was that in this was in the Amoresco, was that in this week's packet, just so I can refer to it?
motion was made on the 27th. The work anticipated, Amoresco
Oh, it was like-
contract
okay.
2114, Amoresco share, I think 6 million or about 28%.
Yeah, no, I was looking for, that was in last week, it was in last week's packet,
It
so
was
I
in
don't
last
have
week's
that,
packet,
I don't have
right.
that in front of me, but, okay.
Okay, well, it's only one paragraph.
Right,
So-
I understand.
So is there any more information, any more information you could get would appreciate it, so I can understand how they came up with their $6 million figure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Council Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just returning to the point about the Rock Bridge, we'll wait for the study to be over, I guess, but my understanding is there's nothing imminent going to happen with that. It'll take some years before we actually get some work done on the bridge. Right now, it's just in the study phase. But in another part of the packet, there was a response to my motion about low-impact development, and it was mentioned in the response, of course, this has quite a bit to do with a previous motion made about stormwater compliance, and so I think we'll just address all of those issues at the same subcommittee meeting sometime in the near future. But thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else under communication? Motion by Councilor Dakota, second by Councilor Broderick, to accept the communications placed on file. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Under City Manager, we have 3 out-of-state travel requests. Can we take them all together?
Yes, so
Okay.
moved.
Motion by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Murphy. Any discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Caulfield.
Yes.
Counselor Dakota.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes,
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Broderick.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Next item, reappointment of Bernard Cassidy to the Cemetery Commission. We have a letter from the city manager. Dear Mayor Milonazo and members of the city council, please be advised that I'm reappointing Bernard F. Cassidy of 54 Viola Street to the Cemetery Commission for a new 5-year term expiring July 12, 2015. Since confirmation by the city council is not required for this appointment, this letter is notification of such appointment. If you have any questions regarding this matter, please feel free to contact me. Accept the communication placed on file by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Mendonça. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, to vote. Next item, Constable Bond, David M. Rourke. We have a communication from the city manager to the city clerk. Dear Mr. Johnson, please find attached an application for constable for the current term beginning on January 1st, 2008 and terminating January 4th, 2011 to the city of Lowell with my signature is submitted to me by David M. Rourke, 405 West 6th Street, Lowell. Thank you for your attention in this matter. Please do not hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, Bernard Eflin, city manager. Motion to approve the constable bond by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Dakota. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Caulfield.
Yes.
Counselor Dakota.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
yes,
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Broderick.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next item, dear Mayor Milonazo and members of the City Council, pursuant to the authorities specified under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 12, and the Code of the City of Lowell, Article 2, Section 9-3, it is with pleasure that I am appointing Gary Perrin, 235 Wentworth Avenue, Lowell, as a member of the Board of Appeals to fill the unexpired term of the late John D. Knox, which term expires June 3rd, 2013, or such time thereafter until a successor is appointed and qualified. Confirmation by the City Council is required for this appointment and is hereby requested. I would be happy to answer any inquiry you may have concerning this appointment. I have attached his resume for your review. Very truly yours, Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. Any motion to approve by Councilor Murphy, seconded by Councilor Martin?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Counselor Caulfield.
Yes.
Counselor Dakota.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo.
Yes.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Broderick. 8 yeas, 1 absent.
Next item, in City Council, stay of demolition order, property 127 Humphrey Street, Lowell, marginal reference book 23906, page 168. Owner, Linda Sheff, 337 Beacon Street, Lowell, 385 Gorham Street, Lowell. Whereas the City Council of the City of Lowell, after hearing and pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 139, Section 1, 2, 3, and 3A, as amended on April 27, 2010, ordered the above referenced property demolished, and whereas thereafter the owner has entered into a purchase and sale agreement with Able Investments Incorporated, and whereas the buyer has provided a mortgage pre-approval letter, a construction cost estimate for renovation, and a general scope of work and floor plan, and whereas this property would be more beneficial to the city if put back on the tax rolls versus being demolished, and whereas it is the city's desire to stay the demolition order for a period of 60 days to enable the new owner to obtain a permit and move forward with the rehabilitation work monitored by the building department, and whereas upon verification by the building department that the conditions have been satisfied, the city manager, upon the city council's authority, shall rescind and revoke the order of demolition recorded on April 28, 2010, at the Middlesex North Registry of Deeds, Book 23906, page 168. Now therefore it is ordered and adjudged by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the order of demolition issued by the City Council on April 27, 2010, on the property at 127 Humphrey Street, be and is hereby stayed for a period of 60 days to enable the new owner to obtain a permit and move forward with the rehabilitation work monitored by the building department. And whereas upon verification by the building department that the conditions have been satisfied, the city manager, upon the city council's authority, shall rescind and revoke the order of demolition recorded on April 28, 2010, at Middlesex North Registry of Deeds, Book 23906, page 168. Second reading by title. In City Council, stay of demolition order, property 127 Humphrey Street, Lowell, marginal reference book 23906, page 168, owner Linda Sheff, 337 Beacon Street, Lowell, and 385 Gorham Street, Lowell. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a perfect example of how a neighborhood becomes blighted with certain pieces of property being neglected, and we as a council bring forward a demolition request, and then it kind of like ignites a fire under the feet of certain people, such as this case here, whereby now we have a new prospective new owner. We're giving them 60 days to see if they can prove to get this rehabilitated. They're going to obtain a permit and do the rehabilitation work. And in the long run, it's more beneficial, as you said, to keep the property on the tax roll than to have it demolished and have an empty piece of land there with generating really nothing. So this is a perfect example of what we're trying to do when we say move to demolish. We really don't want to do that, but we want people to wake up and let's do something with it. And this is that opportunity that's before us. So I have no other recourse but to say move approval. Thank you.
Approval by Councilor Mercia. You want a second, or you have a question?
I'll second it, but
Okay,
I want to
second by
comment.
Councilor Caulfield. Chair recognizes Councilor Caulfield.
Mr. Manager, we're going to give them a stay of 60 days, and they're going to have to prove to the city, the building department, that they are serious about rehabbing this building. And if they don't show a sincere effort, it's going to come back before us to demolish. Because I've seen these more and more and more. They promise you the world, and they do nothing. So as long as it's going to come back before us, if they don't live up to their sincerity and don't fulfill their obligation, then it'll be back before us.
Mr. Manager.
If I may, Mr. Mayor. Counselor, I believe, and I'll have the city solicitor can confirm or what I'm saying, but I believe what would happen here is that we're giving them 60 days. If they do not meet the requirements within the 60 days, the order goes back into effect. It never has to come back to the city council to come back for a vote.
Okay.
And
Very
I
good.
think that's being fair,
That's right.
but we have to be fair with ourselves, too.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on this issue? Roll call.
Counselor Caulfield.
Yes.
Counselor Dakota.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Counselor Murphy. Counselor
Yes.
Broderick. 8 yeas, 1 absent.
Next item, in City Council to cover shortfall in Veterans Benefits account in the Veterans Department. Ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the amount of $95,000 be transferred from school unemployment account number 015270051 to Veterans Benefits account within the Veterans Department, account number 05434157, more fully described in Attachment A. Order recommended introduced by Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. Second reading by title. Vote in City Council to cover, order to cover shortfall in Veterans Benefits account in the Veterans Department, ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the amount of $95,000 be transferred. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move approval by Council Caulfield, second by Council Elliott. Question, Council Elliott.
Thank you. I clearly support this, but Mr. Manager, the transfer says that money was left over from the school unemployment account. There was a surplus. How much was left over in that account? Or what is left over?
You recall, and I'll defer to the CFO or the city auditor to give you a number if they have that readily available. But you recall that this past year, the school unemployment came in higher than we had originally budgeted. They had set aside some money, but it wasn't clear exactly whether that would be enough, so we added another $750,000 back in November. In a subsequent memo, there were questions raised, I believe, by you, Counselor, and we submitted a report that indicated that it did appear that there was going to be adequate funds and we wouldn't use that $750,000 or all of that $750,000, but it would be necessary during the course of the year to handle other budget issues that we knew were out there at the time that might have been able to be carried over, but better certainly to take care of them in this fiscal year. This falls into that category where by law we're required to pay these veterans benefits, but it's better to pay them now than to just defer them into the next fiscal year. Likewise with some court judgments that we have and the like. I believe there's still, even after this, there's about $650,000 in that account, but I would defer to.
So what was the total appropriation for unemployment, or that was anticipated that we didn't use? So we transferred 750 and there's 600 left, less this 95?
No, including this 95, the
Including this
650 left.
95?
Right.
So of the 600, I do recall there were going to be some, there's some court judgments. Is that going to come out of that 600 too? Do we know what that figure is?
We likely have a couple of other needs that we'll have to clean up as we get toward the end of the year. You'll be seeing in the next few meetings. Some may be in the court judgments, those accounts. We may have a couple of other accounts that are running very tight because the way we budgeted this year, you remember we cut, we had a $14 million cut in local aid and we cut the budgets very severely. There was no excess. This is really one of the few places where we have excess now.
Okay. Could we get a report or just a summary as exactly how much the school unemployment was and how many claims, as you mentioned, knowing we're going into another year and getting a handle, and I know you've been working with the school department to get a handle on, what they needed, what they had in their reserve, and what the city, had to kick in.
I can give you that report right now. We appropriated $345,000 on the city side, expended it all. And then the schools expended another probably $600,000 in that range. And our extra appropriation of $750 was untouched until tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Mendonça.
Yes, just to clarify for me, through the mayor to the manager or the CFO, is this a line item that's subsidized by the state? I remember hearing that the state covers 75%
Exactly.
of veterans benefits.
That's correct. It's, it covers 75%. There's usually a year lag once you submit the paperwork. The Veterans Agent, Mr. Lamarche, will submit the paperwork on these monies going out, and we will pick this up in fiscal year 2012, I believe.
That long, okay. So this is actually the entirety, and we'll probably get 75% back from this?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other-
If I may,
Oh, Mr. Manager.
in the budget, and of course, next week you'll be getting the fiscal year 11 budget, you'll note in the revenue section, there's a category of money that comes in for veterans benefits, and that's calculated on the prior year, if you will, expenditure of funds.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call. Oh, I'm sorry, Council Martin.
And this is something mandated by law, right? I mean,
That's
if
correct.
veterans qualify, they're entitled to this benefit, they apply, they get it, we have to fund it, and then the state reimburses the bulk of that cost, 75% subsequently.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
right.
That's
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Council Caulfield.
I just want to say that, Mr. Manager, moving the Veterans Agent and the office over to the senior center was a great move because the veterans now have access to parking. And what's happening is more veterans are going there for assistance. And not that they weren't getting here at City Hall,
Right.
but the approach and the accessibility, everything is much easier at the senior center. I've heard that from many, many, many people.
Thank you, Mr. Counselor.
Thank you, Council Caulfield. Roll call.
Counselor Caulfield.
Yes.
Counselor Dakota.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Broderick.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Public hearing time, we actually have 5 public hearings before us this evening. The first one, in City Council vote, accepting Chapter 235 of the Acts of 1994, which authorizes a firefighter or police officer whose employment was terminated due to a reduction in force and subsequently reinstated to their former position to be credited with active service for such period of unemployment subject to certain limitations. Roll call, I'm sorry, I'm going to open up the public hearing unless the manager has a presentation. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, it's a very brief presentation. This is being submitted by the administration at the request of the fire union, which has indicated that there are members of their unit that were laid off back in the 1990s. I may have indicated to the council, I can't recall, but I know it was in my mind when we put this forward that we hadn't actually laid anyone off last year. It hadn't laid off any firefighters for some time. So it was unclear to me exactly why they had asked us to submit this. And in fact, it refers more to or deals more with firefighters that were laid off back in the 1990s that are interested in buying back some of the time that they were off service. There's no cost to the city for this, but it does give them an opportunity to put money into the retirement system to buy back the time that they otherwise would lose.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. We'll open the public hearing to all those wishing to speak in favor. In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Open the public hearing for all those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition? In opposition? That public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council? Councilor Mercia.
I'd like to just comment on this aspect right here. It's probably not exactly the same, but I do understand where they're going with this, because at one point in time, my husband worked in the union, and he worked for 9 years, 3 months, and there was no work anymore, and it became 1976. He started in 1966. Now, 9 years, 3 months later, he has no more work, but he paid into his dues, offered to buy back that time. Because he didn't reach the 10 years, he wasn't vested. When he did come back a year later, it's like he started out at day one. That was very unfair. He was not allowed to buy into anything, even though he paid his dues, he paid everything that he was supposed to, was not allowed to buy back, and lost 9.3 years of his life and had to start over. So if they're asking for this, it's only a matter of fairness is what I can say, and I personally feel that because I've gone through it in a different indirect way, so I can feel that response there.
This actually gets referred back to the city clerk's office for 1 week, so any other comments or questions? Motion by Councilor Caulfield, second by Councilor Martin to send to the city clerk office for 1 week. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. The next ordinance is, we actually have 3 ordinances. The first item would be to review a communication from the planning board, which provided us with recommendations on all 3 ordinances. So it would be in order to accept the communication from the planning board and placed on file by Councilor Murphy, second by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. The first public hearing is ordinance in City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinance, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Chapter 290 thereof entitled Lowell Zoning Ordinance by inserting new definitions under Article 2 and amending Article 7 Special Regulations by creating a new Section 7.9 entitled Wind Energy Facilities. Mr. Manager, do you have any comments on this?
I think I'll defer to Mr. Bakey to give a summary of this this proposal.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Assistant Manager Bakey.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. This proposal basically establishes, defines and establishes the regulations in the city's zoning code for various scales of wind energy facilities that could be allowed in the city of Lowell. Presently, the city zoning code just has a catch-all category for all forms of utility uses, which anyone who wishes to propose a wind energy or other renewable energy facility would have to be regulated to the extent that we regulate as any public utility use. It is as part of the Green Communities Act process that the city was fortunate to learn today that we were designated a green community, one of the first 35 in this Commonwealth. One of the things that will help us in the subsequent grant round will be if we have a specific wind ordinance. And many communities across the Commonwealth have already adopted wind ordinances very similar to this one. It will establish both a very clear set of performance standards with respect to everything from the height of the facility, the setbacks of the facilities, the aesthetics of the facilities, landscaping, noise impacts, and other factors. It will also create a review process for the larger facilities, any ground-mounted facilities, which would be the big wind turbines that are actually anchored on the ground, would require site plan review by the planning board. And most wind facilities in most districts, except our industrial districts, would require a special permit that would also be issued by the planning board. It divides, the proposed ordinance divides wind facilities into a series of categories ranging from the large ground-mounted facilities that would basically be feeding the power grid and would essentially be like power plants, not unlike the one that you see in, I believe it's Medford or Malden that you see on the way on I-93 if you're driving into Boston. There's another one at the IBEW Hall in Dorchester that you can see from the Southeast Expressway, and there's a few others around town or around the area as well. It also regulates smaller ground-mounted wind facilities, which generally provide power not so much to the grid, but to the property that they're affiliated with. And then it separately would regulate building-mounted facilities, which typically always provide power to the building that they're anchored onto. Those might be on somebody's house or on a smaller commercial building or something like that, or you do see them, a recent project, Walmart recently built a store, I believe in Worcester, where they mounted about a dozen of them on the Walmart store. So you see them in a variety of different types. And then finally, it establishes a category for temporary meteorological towers, which are generally used to gauge the wind in a particular area to determine if it's feasible to generate wind power in those locations. Again, this basically will establish, it will do 2 things for us primarily. One, it will establish, again, the regulations that these things and the review process for these. But secondly, it also will call to the public's attention the city's desire to embrace renewable energy to the extent that we can. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions after the public hearing or in whatever form people wish.
Thank you, Mr. Bakey. The chair would now like to open the public hearing for all those wishing to speak in favor of the ordinance. In favor of the ordinance. Good evening, Mr. Green.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Milanazzo, City Council members, city staff. My name is Stephen Green. I'm speaking in my capacity as a member of the Green Building Commission, and just want to express the regret that our chair, David Turcott, was not able to be here tonight because of a previous teaching commitment. We have spent a lot of time working with the Planning and Development Department on this ordinance, and we'd like to make sure that maybe it needs a little bit more work and massaging with the planning committee, planning board, but we do want to see it move forward because we think it is an important message to the community at large and as part of our overall green planning for the whole city. I know that the notion of by right sounds kind of ominous and sort of puts the fear of God into people, but if you look at the level of detail in the ordinance, it's 11 pages, we've really put some fairly specific requirements so that even though you might be able to do it by right, there are lots of provisions that you're not going to have wind towers everywhere and that they're going to be done in a manner that prevents nuisance, deals with the noise and any other types of issues as Adam Backey had mentioned. So with that, we leave it up to your discretion. If you decide that some more work needs to be done, we would be inclined to say, refer this to a joint meeting of the Zoning and the Environment Committee, because we think this is an important ordinance to have. It's sort of like form-based code, sort of setting the standards for these requirements for wind energy facilities in the city for the future. And we've got provisions for the historic district so that, we've tried to be thoughtful, but I also want to send a message to the community at large and other people looking at Lowell as a green community that we're making provisions for clean energy in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Sir. Name and address, please.
Hi. My name is David Logvin, and I live on 30 at Starboard Street, and I too am a member of the Green Building Commission. I believe the proposed wind ordinance is beneficial to our city. We stand to gain economic opportunity in the by right districts. As the districts are limited to industrial zones, the installation of wind facilities would not only bring jobs for construction and maintenance, but they could enhance certain districts as well, depending on the design elements used. An excellent point of discussion raised at the recent planning board meeting was in regard to noise impacts. As the districts are industrial zones, these locations are already in close proximity to major roads where there's a high level of background noise which is accepted. This can easily mask many industrial noise sources. Furthermore, the proposed ordinance provides suitable protections that must be complied with. In light of the opportunity we have in continuing support of the Green Communities Act, fostering economic development, and at the same time preserving and protecting the quality of life for the citizens of Lowell, I hope the City Council chooses to send this proposed wind ordinance for further review with the joint environmental and zoning subcommittees. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
City Council.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Good evening. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Steve Hatton, 35 Harland Ave. And I, too, am here tonight as an advocate for the use of wind energy and to encourage the development and implementation of a wind ordinance by the City of Lowell. I agree and support Mr. Stephen Green and the advice of the Lowell Green Building Commission in asking that the currently proposed wind ordinance put together by the city's planning and development team in conjunction with the Green Building Commission be considered and referred to the appropriate committees with the hopes that specific and legitimate concerns regarding the proposal be addressed in a satisfactory manner. In my opinion, the encouragement and propagation of wind energy schemes will benefit us immediately. However, the primary impact of steps made today will more importantly target future generations by helping to ensure viable and lasting sources of energy to be utilized in homes, to power industry, while at the same time helping to ensure a clean environment. I think that most children would not look at a modern wind turbine without feeling a sense of enthusiasm, wonder, and excitement, and most importantly, optimism for the future. and optimism that will hopefully inspire future engineers and environmentalists. The large smokestacks that are such a hallmark of the Lowell skyline and indeed represent in many ways the city and instill a sense of pride in many people, unfortunately are often used as icons for pollution and environmental devastation. And I think the modern wind turbine, and in many ways it already is an icon for the future, much like the recycling sign. However, this icon represents something in direct opposition to that of the smokestack. How grateful would we be, and how grateful are we for past lawmakers that were on the watch for our best interests? I'm sure there were such people, and I'm sure there are such people in the room here tonight, and I think you deserve to be applauded. And someday, maybe in this very room, the future council will debate the preservation of that old wind turbine that represents the ingenuity and innovation of the people way back in 2010 when they first pushed the city toward renewable energy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor?
And I hope I'm still on the council.
Good evening.
Hello, everyone. Mayor Milanazzo, Manager Lynch, City Council, thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jay Mason, 77 Tyler Park. I want to say basically 3 quick points, if I could. I believe that the wind ordinance recognizes Lowell's growing position as a leader in alternative energy generation. Wind ordinance protects property rights. It means the opportunity to accept wind power generation. It does not force wind on any individual, any resident, any neighbor, as it will be worked out with zoning and environmental subcommittees. The ordinance will provide a gateway to the use of clean energy with the appropriate safeguards for land rights and neighborhood concern. Finally, wind power leaves no imprint or slick on the landscape. In many cases, wind power provides a net positive cash return. And I just want to quickly point out the example of the city of Medford. The city of Medford, which has also been a leader in this particular area, erected a 131-foot tall wind turbine. And I'm not saying that this is what Lowell can do. I just want to make the point that you can erect wind power. And in their case, for a $660,000 investment, they received a combination of $550,000 from various concerns, primarily Mass Tech Collaborative, MTC, Mass Energy Consumers Alliance, and state appropriation. So the bottom line is they spent $110,000, and the unit is generating an income of $25,000. So that's a 4.5-year payback. At the end of 4.5 years, they have now a net positive of $25,000, and I'd like to point out that in about a year and a half, that would be 1 teacher's salary. So they could potentially bring back a teacher that they had lost. And I think that's a good example for the community, and it's a good example for the state. I support the movement of the ordinance to the appropriate committees at environmental and zoning, and I personally support the idea of doing wind energy or providing a gateway for that technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. Mr. Goldman.
Mr. Mayor, members of Lowell City Council, Manager Lynch, ladies and gentlemen, for the record, my name is Mark Goldman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. Wish to be recorded in favor of this. I attended the planning board meeting, the hearing. I spoke in favor of this, and I know that they have some concerns. I urge that the city council, if need be, or if they refer this to the environmental and zoning subcommittees, also invite members of the Green Building Commission to it, as well as members of the planning board, Conservation Commission, and the Historic Board, because they're all going to be involved in this in some way. This is my firm support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor. That portion of the public hearing is closed. Those wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition. Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, just I appreciate the comments from the members of the public that spoke on this tonight, and as has been pointed out, there were some issues or concerns raised by the planning board that I think are easily remedied. And even on its face, I think that the ordinance that's been presented to you as is very positive for the city. As was pointed out by Mr. Bakey, and I was going to save this for a little bit later in the meeting when we talked about the Green Communities Act, we were successful. One of 35 communities statewide that was designated as a green community. The actions that the City Council has taken over the last several months, and I want to commend the City Council for its actions, particularly Councilor Murphy, who has certainly been an advocate for moving us forward with the Green Communities Act. It puts us in a very elite group statewide and opens up the door for us to obtain grant money. There's roughly $8.1 million available statewide. We have to submit a grant application by the end of next week. I believe it's June 4th is the deadline. One of the considerations that the grantor agency will use in making the decision is whether, in fact, we have an ordinance like this on the books. Certainly, we can make the case that we intend to have one on the books, but it would be more helpful to us if, in fact, it was already there. So, just that I think the council should know that it may be advisable to adopt the ordinance at this time, and then simultaneously refer it to the Zoning and Environmental Subcommittee to perhaps amend it in the next month or two to address some of the concerns that may be raised, or to at least answer some of the questions that have been raised. But if there's a belief on the council that wind power or renewable energy is advantageous to the city, and that it is consistent with the Green Communities Act, that we were successful in receiving the designation, would help us get that grant money, I think it may make sense to do that, and as I say, then come back and make the necessary changes if deemed necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to thank the committee for coming forward and very eloquently bringing this issue before us. There is no doubt in anyone's mind we have to divorce ourselves from fossil fuel. And we're sending billions of dollars over to people every year who don't like us. But I'm going to support this, but I just have a few questions. The city of Lowell is land poor. We don't have acres and acres and acres of land that we can say we're going to do this. I'm just concerned about neighborhoods and people in general. If a developer came into the city and said, they're going to put a wind energy tower in this, would people have the right to come forward and express their views, and would it have to go before the council? And I notice on the second page, on number 3, no wind energy facility will be erected, constructed, installed, or modified as provided in this section without first obtaining a building permit from the building commissioner. All such wind energy facilities shall meet all technical and design standards as set forth in this section. That's the only question I have. I just want to make sure the citizens of the city have some protection that if a developer wants to come in and erect these wind energy facilities, that they're just not going to.
Okay, if I could, I'm going to defer once again to Mr. Bakey, and I believe what Mr. Bakey will say, premonition, is that in fact, right now, without this ordinance in place, they could put it anywhere. And with this, it will be more restricted, but at the same time, puts in place clearly our support of wind energy. But I'll let Mr. Bakey say that.
What he said, right? I can actually illustrate that if you like. I've got maps that show where the gray and black areas of the city are the areas where a developer under the current ordinance could conceivably put a large wind turbine. And this map here is showing the dark gray and black areas are the areas. The dark gray areas are the areas where they would need a special permit, and the black areas where it could be by right, provided they meet the performance standards and obtain site plan review. So obviously, the ordinance would actually, it's almost contrary to the purpose of encouraging wind, but it would actually reduce the areas where one could do it. And the reason for that, all of the areas that change as a result of the ordinance are the areas like the residential neighborhoods of the city where one would not expect to see would not want to see a turbine like the one that you can see from the highway in Medford. However, in some of our industrial areas, along the Lowell Connector and other places, those are maybe the appropriate places for us to encourage these types of facilities. So the ordinance actually encourages it where it's appropriate and actually prohibits it where it's not appropriate, but might actually be allowed today.
And the planning board brought this amendment forward, more or less?
Mr. Bakey, the role of the planning board in bringing the...
Did the planning board more or less take a long, hard look at this and bring the amendment forward to?
Actually, this amendment was actually brought forward in response to a motion by the City Council, I believe by Councilor Murphy, to look at the components of the Green Communities Act, this being one of those components. The Planning Board reviewed this, did review this ordinance, and you'll see in the recommendation that was accepted this evening that the Planning Board actually recommended against adopting this ordinance. I believe that they identified a series of reasons that they were, of concerns that they had, and I believe that there are aspects of the ordinance that actually address most of these, and in fact, most of the concerns that they raised are the sorts of things that are more appropriately discussed in the form of a specific proposal rather than the ordinance. And the ordinance actually provides for both, a site plan review process by the planning board and specific standards and requirements for what needs to be demonstrated as part of that process and what needs to be provided as part of that process. And then in any location where there's even a question about what the impacts of these might be on the surrounding neighborhood, there actually is a special permit process that also would be before the planning board. So as we would move forward, if the council wishes to adopt this ordinance and someone does come in with a proposal, the planning board would actually have the ability to scrutinize in great detail that particular proposal.
Thank you. I think Adam has answered my question and the council's concerns. And once again, I don't want to be redundant, but Mr. Mayor, you know as well as we all know, we're land poor in the city, and I just wouldn't want a developer coming in and say, we're going to put an energy facility here and there and without some concern from the people who live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Broderick?
Well, I guess through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure. It sounds like the manager is indicating that for the sake of our application, it might make sense to take a vote on the ordinance tonight and then maybe, I'm reading into this now, suspend the rules to maybe put a motion into review and maybe make any amendments necessary. If I would make that motion to I guess approve the ordinance and then as amended, and I guess after a vote of that, if I could suspend the rules to ask the.
Okay. Second by Councilor Dakota, I believe had her hand up first. Councilor Mendonça, you had a comment?
Yes, I was just going to bring up the issue that they had a negative vote in one of these, and that's why it took me a little while to catch on while they were recommending to send this to a subcommittee, is because the planning board actually vote was not to be, that the energy facilities not be adopted as proposed. And those are the 6 points that they have in their minutes. When I read through the new language that was being proposed, I thought it was a betterment of the code and that I was going to support it. But I would like to see these issues addressed unless there's some time concern about this particular part of the proposal. It is broken up into 3 pieces. This is only one of the 3 pieces. I believe they voted to recommend the other 2. It's just this one that they had concerns with these 6 points. In that light, if there's not a time constraint, I would rather send it to a subcommittee and air out these things and get them addressed. If there is, I think we could move forward and adopt it and then work on these issues after the fact, because I think either way it's a betterment.
Okay. Mr. Manager?
The time constraint is the grant application of June 4th, and again, Mr. Baker may be able to speak to some of this, but I think if we had it fully in place, and then we could meet to talk about some further improvements or further addressing the concerns with improvements or just clarifications, then I think that would be more advantageous for the city. We hadn't anticipated the announcement today that we were approved for the Green Communities Act and the necessity to get that application in. So that's what sort of changed the plans a little bit for us.
Yeah, well, in that case, with a time constraint, I would concur with Councilor Broderick's suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Martin?
I would just add that this is not, I mean, it is somewhat unusual to get a negative recommendation from the planning board, and I think we all certainly respect the work that the planning board does, but having been the chair of the zoning subcommittee some years ago, it really was an intensive effort in bringing our code really into a more modern zoning code, and that involved adopting a number of changes that later had to go back and be amended for technical and substantive reasons. So certainly, so I agree with the approach to adopt this tonight, but I would, and despite the planning board's concern, and we had disagreements at the time, we changed the zoning significantly too, and we're not always going to agree, but nothing is cast in stone, and there's certainly the opportunity, I think, to improve things, and I think the council's track record bears that out, and the way we've dealt with the existing new zoning as things have come to light. We've acted on them, sometimes at the suggestion of the planning board, other times at our own initiative. So, and sometimes at the initiative of the staff too. So there's kind of three components, add in that, neighborhood groups and things. So it's a dynamic process, and I don't think acting tonight forecloses any of that from continuing to take place.
Thank you. Councilor Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's important to note that the changes we're talking about are not drastic changes. A lot of the work has been done for a year or more now by the planning department in putting this together. And so a lot of the issues that were raised here in the report back from the planning board are addressed in some way. And whether or not some minor changes need to be made is I think, a question that can really be answered during the subcommittee, whether it be zoning or environmental or joint subcommittee. But there are protections in here for neighborhoods and in the other places where these would be allowed by right. There are performance standards for noise pollution. There's all kinds of setback requirements that really do protect the various zoning areas that we have currently. So we're not talking about, really drastically amending this ordinance. The main intent behind this is to, one, really support that green application grant process, but more broadly to encourage the use of renewable energy here in the city. Now, whether or not it's feasible in all of these different locations is another story. There's really probably very few places here in the city that where this would be actually feasible from a technical standpoint of whether or not there would be enough wind to generate power. But I think this is an important step, not only to support this application, but to support the move that the city has been making in the last year or so towards becoming more sustainable. And so I think that it makes sense to support this current ordinance and then come back in a few weeks and make some changes that would improve the how it fits in together with different neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Anyone else? We have a motion that's been seconded. Roll call. Yes, sir. Council Caulfield.
Before we take a vote, I want to know how this vote will affect, Mr. Manager, your application for June 4th. Will it affect?
It will be positive. A vote in favor of this will be very positive to our application.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, what Council Murphy indicated, send this to a subcommittee, and
Now, the plan, if I could, the plan is to vote the ordinance this evening.
Okay,
and then
that's
move
what
to
I want to see.
Move in substitution.
Definitely, okay.
Yes. So the first vote is to approve the ordinance. Motion's been made, it's been seconded. Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Dakota.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Chair would then recognize Councilor Broderick to suspend the rules, seconded by Councilor Mendoza. And the purpose of this suspension is to put forward a motion to refer this ordinance to a joint meeting of the zoning and environmental subcommittees for further review.
So moved.
Motion, seconded by Councilor Mendoza. All those in favor of sending it to the joint meeting of the zoning and environmental subcommittee signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. Next public hearing, in City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinance, City of Lowell with respect to Chapter 290 thereof entitled Lowell Zoning Code by amending the form-based zoning as well as various sections of the code. Chair recognizes the city manager.
I'll let Mr. Bakey handle this one all by himself.
Thank you, Mr. Bakey.
I think Councilor Martin earlier in the previous discussion mentioned that we do come back from time to time with technical amendments and corrections, and that's essentially what this one is. This is not a substantive proposal, but in fact it is correcting a series of everything from scrivener's errors to clarifications of language in a couple of areas within the code. There are two proposed changes within the form-based code that governs the Hamilton Canal District, one of which addresses the fact that the map that shows what areas are governed by the form-based code inadvertently includes a couple of parcels that it should not have, and we're restoring the previously underlying zoning to those areas, clarifying the city's ability and authority to utilize lands that are not yet developed in the Hamilton Canal District for surface parking. And then we have a series of, again, error corrections in the body of the general zoning, and a couple of clarifications. I would like to point out that one of the items that's being clarified, the planning board raised some questions as to whether the clarification was clear, and that is item 6.1.11, note 6. And we are happy to either see the current proposed clarification adopted and keep that on our list for further clarification later, or if the council wishes to eliminate that particular item from this and adopt the other ones and then save that for further discussion, we're happy to do that as the council wishes. And again, if anybody has any questions about this proposal, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Bakey. The chair will now open the public hearing for all those wishing to speak in favor. In favor, Mr. Goldman.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Manager, my name is Mark Owen, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. I spoke in favor of this before the planning board at their hearing, and I urge the council to unanimously approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Mr. Green?
My name is Stephen Green. I reside at 181 Market Street, and I just want to be registered as being in favor of this. I had spoken in favor of the original form-based code for the Hamilton Canal District because it's a great way to approach the setting out the requirements, and these editorial corrections are something, as we had pushed through a rather complex document. I think I can continue my support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor. That portion of the public hearing is closed. Those wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? Public hearing is now closed. What's the wish of the council?
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Council Martin, seconded by Council Broderick. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Dakota.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Next public hearing in City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinance, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Chapter 290 thereof entitled Lowell Zoning Ordinance by amending Article 9 Overlay District, specifically Section 9.1 Floodplain Overlay District. Mr. Manager.
It's Mr. Bakey.
Mr. Bakey.
I am happy to report that the planning board likes this one as it is. This particular proposal is a reflection of the fact that FEMA has recently promulgated new floodplain maps, something that the council is well aware of, and the city has, on behalf of some of the residents in some of the impacted areas, made efforts to try to combat some of the changes. This particular proposal doesn't really address that matter, but in fact what it does is it ensures that our zoning-based floodplain overlay district conforms to the new maps as they are issued. And if there's any appeals or changes to those maps, we will conform to those as well. The reason this is important is that it is one of the criteria that allows us to stay in compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program, which allows homeowners whose properties are in the flood areas to be able to obtain flood insurance of last resort if they're not able to obtain conventional insurance through a conventional insurer. So in fact, by adopting these changes, we are actually protecting the people who are in the floodplain areas and their ability to obtain the insurance that is necessary for that. And again, essentially the only change is that we are saying that our floodplain overlay district will match the new maps as opposed to our current, prior to this change, floodplain overlay district that is defined to match the prior set of maps. It is important that this, if the council does wish to adopt this, that it be adopted at this meeting, because the deadline for completing this change and staying in compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program is June 4th. So this is essentially the last opportunity to address that. Again, I'm happy to answer questions after the public hearing if anyone has any.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, just in members of the council, just in addition to the presentation by Mr. Bakey, I know that Councilor Martin has raised this issue on a number of occasions, that these maps have enlarged this area of that are considered floodplain, and that is a result of the city's failure over a number of years to according to the federal government, adequately maintain the flood structures, flood control structures that were put in place by the federal government back in the 1940s as a result of the 36 and 38 floods that affected the city. And we've made tremendous strides in getting that work done over the last 2 years. And we hope to complete all of that work within the next 1 or 2 years, and then go back in for recertification of those flood control structures, and hopefully be able to amend these floodplain maps. It is unfortunate that that this is now including these new properties, but this is happening really across the country, as they've now, in response to the Katrina incident, that the federal government is taking a very hard line on the maintenance of levees and flood control structures. In our particular case, the issue was eliminating the vegetation that's in the levee. Mr. McCarthy and Mr. Young have done an excellent job of getting that work done, doing the necessary work to recertify the levee itself with the analysis that's been done of the viability of that structure, and some improvements that will be necessary to that, which is in fact the VFW highway, and then that pump station that's there that has not been used in 30 or 40 years, I believe, that the federal government believes they paid for it and they want to see it working. We see some value in that pump station as part of our CSO strategy. So we don't see it as money just being thrown away to keep the federal government happy. We've been able to work out plans to actually put it to good use. But as I know, the council is concerned, the administration has been concerned that this does now require another 100 or so homes to obtain flood insurance. Again, it was a function of the city really not over the years doing the necessary work. When they notified us in the fall of 2006. We immediately began working on it. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the work done. It's very substantial work, some $10 million worth of work. We couldn't get it done in time for them when they did these maps back a year and a half ago, or thereabouts, but we are continuing to move forward with it. As I say, I know the council's concerned. Councilor Martin has raised this on numerous occasions, and we continue to work on it, but unfortunately, it is necessary to do it this time.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Chair would now open the public hearing for all those wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance.
I thought we just had it.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Manager, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mark Goldman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. I spoke at the public hearing before the planning board on this in favor of it. I'm in favor of it today and urge that the city council unanimously approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gorman. Anyone else wish to speak in favor? In favor? That portion of the public hearing is closed. Those wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? Public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move approval by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Mendonça. Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Manager's right, I brought this up a number of occasions. I continue to think, this is not assistance from the federal government at all. I'm going to vote for this. I understand that we need to have our zoning reflect the current maps, the current flood maps in flood study. It's the maps and the study I have an issue with. And so that's really what my question is. So I have two questions. I guess, what prompted the review of the maps? Was it Katrina? Was it the flood we had here? Or was it just sort of the 10 or 20-year review that they get? And then number two, when and if we do bring our systems up to compliance with what FEMA requires, what's the process to get the maps changed back or updated?
I have an answer to the first, and I'm not sure I have a full answer to the second, but the first is that this was not Lowell specific. This was statewide, I believe, or region-wide, as part of their normal review. But in doing that, they do have input from the Corps of Engineers and other parties, and that's how that triggered this change. And again, the city of Lowell is not unique in that. There are a number of other communities that are going through similar experiences. As far as the process of amending this, I'm not entirely sure what the process is. I know that there are ways that we can contact and provide additional information and make the case, and hopefully they will be able to make those alterations. Mr. Baker, do you have any sense beyond that? No.
But it's not automatic. It's not, we put the pump station in place, and so we go back to the map that it was before, right? I mean,
it's not automatic, but I think we can make a very strong case that, in fact, we've done everything they asked us to do, they told us to do. We now meet the certification requirements of the Corps of Engineers. That will change the conditions of the floodplain maps, and we will, make that case as to why that should be altered. And then that would require then coming back and amending our own zoning map to mirror that once they approve that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott?
Mr. Manager, thank you, Mayor. What's the cost of putting that pump station back into operation?
I believe the cost, as I recall, is about $6 million.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield? Yes. Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Donza?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
9 yeas.
The last public hearing has to do with conduit location on Adams Street, Broadway Street, Dublin Street, Fletcher Street, and Suffolk Street. The chair would like to open the public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor. In favor. Public hearing is closed for those wishing to speak in favor and open to those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition. Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move approval, refer to the wire inspected by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Mercia. Any questions? Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Continuing now with the city manager's agenda. Vote in City Council, order to pay for expenses for appraisals for land takings in University Avenue Bridge. Ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the amount of $5,000 be transferred from contingency account number 012370056 to Division of Planning and Development for Professional Services account number 018245153. Order recommended and introduced by Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. Second reading by title, vote in City Council, order to pay for expenses for appraisals for land takings on the University Avenue Bridge. Ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the amount of $5,000 be transferred. What's the wish of the council? Move approval by Council Broderick, seconded by Council Caulfield. Any questions, comments? Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Subcommittee reports. Do we have any subcommittee
Yes.
reports? Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did meet today at 5 o'clock, the Parks and Recreation Subcommittee. We met previously on April 20th, and at that time, we heard discussion about different situations and problems that arose at Father Maguire Park, as indicated by a motion from Councilor Elliott. So we did meet with Cheryl Saber as well as Ray Booton, and they talked about SJA Jeanne d'Arc Basketball League, and we learned of all the different concerns that they had, and we heard them, and the manager was there at the time, and he sent the different departments, and everything that they seem to have asked for has been done. We are still waiting for National Grid to bring in some lighting on pole number 2. Other than that, everything has been fulfilled, and we did ask that, we did say that we would recess the subcommittee meeting on April 20th and bring it back within a month, and this is about a month. And surprisingly enough, no one came, and that was a good thing because no one had any problems that arose further from that, and so I think we're on a good roll, and I could have said the subcommittee speaks for itself, but if you didn't watch it, I had to recap it a little bit. So those are good things, and we're very happy, and so thank you just the same. That's great.
Thank you, Councilor Mercia. Anyone else wishing to speak on the subcommittee report? Motion by Councilor Caulfield, second by Councilor Dakota, to accept the report as a report of progress. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Any other subcommittee reports? Moving on, petitions, we have 2 claims. Personal injury referred to the Law Department by Councilor Mendoza, second by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Mr. Mayor, could I have just a
Yes,
question?
Councilman.
On one of the claims, it has the 3 pages. And I don't know if it's just me, but in reading it appeared to be missing something, because as I go from their first page ending in endured and going into the next page, it seems like there's a page missing. So is there, or so,
We can get in touch with them to get a full copy of the claim. I was saying we can get in touch with them to get a full copy of the claim.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
Councilor
Mayor,
Mercia.
I hate to say this, but could I go back to the point where Adam Bakey came up and showed the map, the different maps, the gray with the black, and he showed where the...
Just 1 minute. Why don't we just vote this? Vote to refer to the Law Department. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Councilor Mercia?
Yes, thank you. Do I have to repeat that again?
Yeah, no.
Okay, so could we, I don't know if anybody else wants it, but I'd like a copy of those 2 maps in next week's packet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the motion section. First motion by Councilor Martin. City Council requests the city manager to report on enforcement prevention activities of police department planned for upcoming summer months. Second by Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In light of the weather today, summer seems may be here early. I know we had some good news recently, crime reports, and certainly certain types of violent crimes have been down since the last reporting period, which is encouraging, particularly in light of the economy and in light of cutbacks that we've had to make. So. But I think, as it turns to this time of year with school in session, stays lighter longer, people are out at night, not in their homes, and it's we've had issues in the past. So I know things have been very good lately, and, but I think it's something that we always need to keep be watchful of. And I know the police do that, but I think it's important for the police to communicate to the council and to the public what their efforts are. And so that's the point of the motion, and just to get a response back from the police department as to, you know, what efforts they're under. We know when a crime occurs, the police are right on it, but part of having a safe city is what's being done proactive to prevent crime, and that's really what the intent of my motion is.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Councilor, obviously, we'll be happy to get you that report. There are going to be certainly some challenges this summer. One of our funding sources that has paid for additional police coverage and at certain times the last couple of years is the Shannon Grant, and that has been substantially reduced in this year's state budget. But we will certainly work to make sure that we're doing what we can do in terms of prevention. Certainly a big part of what goes on in the summer is issues with our youth. We're still pushing forward to get private sector to hire our youth. We have a number of slots that are available through the Career Center with some of the stimulus money that's still available to them, as well as the normal programs that they administer. Our recreation programs, we're very fortunate to recall that we had Eastern Bank come in and make the contribution for our pools, and so that will allow us to keep the pools open and free up some of the additional money that we would have had to have used to keep, you know, fewer pools, but pools open. We'll be able to put towards some other recreation programs that will, again, keep our youth occupied during the summer months. So we think we've got a good plan in place, perhaps not as robust as we would like, but a plan nonetheless. But we'll be happy to get that to the council that explains all of that in detail.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, to vote. Next motion by Councilor Martin. City Council requests the city manager to report on what Lowell receives in room tax revenue, and what, if any, hotel and motel room tax is required to be made available to the local Convention and Visitors Bureau. Second by Councilor Dakota. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's been actually, since I filed this motion, some discussion of this issue in a couple of newspaper accounts, so I think I've got most of the information, but I did hand the clerk the motion as we left here last Tuesday night. So, but what, you know, I was intrigued by the discussion we had with the CVB last week, and you know, one of the brochures that we were given lists a number of hotels, you know, maybe 20 or more, of which 2 are in Lowell, and now one of those is the UMass and Conference Center with fewer rooms. I know the council voted to adopt an add-on, I think, to the hotel motel tax, and we derive some revenue for that, and we also fund the CVB and as well as other entities. So I guess from our point of view, I'd like to know what we get or what we project to get vis-a-vis what we fund, but you know, there's a number of other surrounding communities that I expect have adopted that same tax, and it appears, at least from what's reported in the paper, no other communities make any attempts to fund the CVB at all, and nor is that required. My initial motion is, you know, the state allows you to adopt this tax, but you don't have to kick it back for tourism or anything else. You can just use it for general revenues. So in that sense, I guess I have an answer to my question, but I guess I think it still would be instructive to the council to see the data as to what, you know, what comes into each community versus what each community participates.
Thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Next motion by Councilor Mendonça. City Council requests the city manager report on the amount of taxes paid by the hydro plant at 145 Pawtucket Street since the beginning of operation in the terms of the current pilot. Second by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Mendonça.
Yes. Members of our flood subcommittee and some of us that reside in Pawtucketville have already got an earful about the dam and things of that nature, and I've had questions asked of me about the hydro plant and how they pay taxes. Some of it's unclear. I went into the assessor's database, and the property's assessed at $40 million. So at that amount, if they paid our commercial rate, they'd be paying over $1 million a year. I suspect that the pilot agreement is not that much, but, and I think I heard it, someone told me, I'm not sure if it's official, that that last pilot agreement may have been from 2008, I'm not sure, and I wasn't on the council at the time, so hence the second part, which is for the benefit of the councilors that maybe weren't here then or maybe would like to hear the current terms, is to get what the current terms of that pilot agreement. And talking with a person, they were saying pilot program. I think, oh, pilot plan? It took me a little while to figure out it's payment in lieu of taxes is the acronym. So that's what that's about, is what are they paying in lieu of taxes now on a yearly basis. So I'd appreciate if the council would support us and if the manager could provide us that information.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Again, I'd be happy if the council votes to ask for this report. I do have some information for you right now that we pulled together just to address it briefly tonight. There was a pilot in place. The state law does allow that energy production facilities can enter into a payment in lieu of taxes agreement to sort of have a firm number as to what they have to pay in a given year, given their sort of special status under the law. I'm not aware of how long, I'm not sure how long they had a pilot with the city. It does go back certainly a number of years. You are correct, Councilor, it ended in 2008. At the time it ended, it was $475,000 to $500,000 a year that they were paying. In 2008, we took a very hard line as to what we wanted as a new pilot agreement. We were not able to come to an agreement, so we moved forward to have an appraisal done by an expert in the area of energy plants. They did set that value at about $40 million. They're now Enel is the sixth largest taxpayer in the city with a tax of $850,000 per year. They have filed for an appeal with the Appellate Tax Board, but they are current on their taxes, and they are paying the $850,000 a year.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you for the information.
But we'll get a more detailed, we'll put that in writing for the council as well.
Councilor Elliott and Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Manager, just curious, what are the claims under their filing with ATB? What are they looking to reduce their assessment to?
It's not entirely clear.
It's not?
No. Obviously, like everyone else that files an appeal of they're appealing their value, claiming that it's not worth what we claim it is.
Right.
So
but I do recall at the time we hired a professional appraiser to come up with this, $40 million figure.
Right. You're right. Is that public? Probably. Yeah. They tried to hire our appraiser, but we had already put them in the contract.
Good job.
We're very quick.
On a related subject, is there an update? Councilman Donta mentioned getting questions from people in the community. Any update on the status of the vote to bring forward to oppose the bladder system?
The solicitor is working on that, and we
And
hope
I know
to get
this
that
is
very
not
soon.
okay. That's all. I don't want to interfere with this subject as long as there's a vote coming sometime soon. People up in that particular area, in particular that are concerned with it, would like to know. Thank you.
Councilor Martin.
I want to go back to the issue on the payment in lieu of tax agreement. So we didn't reach agreement for that 1 year. We assessed it at what we allege was the full value. They pay the tax. They're appealing that. Has that now cut off discussion about payment in lieu of taxes for subsequent years? Are we still in active discussions with them on that, or is the appellate tax board proceeding kind of precluded any action there?
Once we tax them, we can't enter into a payment in lieu of taxes. And whereas they've paid, there's really no way. It doesn't preclude us from, in the future, entering into an agreement, and then that property becomes non-taxable again. Of course, we wouldn't do it unless the terms were favorable.
Well, right, and then some settlement could be reached in the ATB case in conjunction, if that were to play out that way. All right. Thank you.
Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Next motion. Would my colleagues mind if I stay up at the
Oh, go
podium?
ahead.
By Mayor Milonazo, City Council requests the city manager to have the proper department enforce the ordinance prohibiting the riding of bicycles on sidewalks. Seconded by Councilor Caulfield. It really does speak for itself, but I did receive a number of calls now that the weather is nice. Kids are riding on the sidewalk, and people are in fear of getting hit. So I just would like the police department to make sure that the ordinance is being enforced. Any other comments, questions? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Next motion by Councilor Caulfield, report on the status of the application Green Community Act. Second by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe you already answered that, and I'm very happy to hear that.
We, as I said, there's been quite a bit of work by the DPD, the Green Building Commission, and certainly by the City Council to pave the way for us to be able to get that designation. And I was saving my announcement for this because I thought the drama of it would be very positive, but Adam stole my thunder. So.
Well, I filed that motion just to bring it.
I knew you must have had an inside track on the information.
A little more excitement.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you. How much money do we anticipate, Mr. Manager?
It's very difficult to say. There's $8.1 million available, and it does help us for the possibility of some additional federal grants. But it's unclear exactly what there's 35 communities.
Right.
I know that I believe the city of Worcester received designation, the city of Salem.
Tingsboro, Lexington, I think.
And then you've got the smaller communities like Tingsboro that have, so.
Every bit helps.
Motion to approve the motion, signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Under unanswered and non-responsive motion, we have one by Councilor Caulfield. Request the city manager report on the status of the reduced speed sign on the VFW highway heading toward UMass Lowell. Second by Councilor Dakota. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you. That's a state highway, Mr. Manager, and if it was controlled by the city, there'd be a sign up there already.
That's correct.
And I was on the VFW highway the other day, and many of my colleagues have traveled that roadway, and you can be going 45 miles an hour, and all of a sudden, there's a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, and there's a low police officer sitting right there. And it's not fair. It's very deceitful, and the other day, there was a low police officer sitting there, waiting for someone to go 48 miles an hour, and the ticket fee is like $150. All I'm asking for is reduce your speed to 30 miles an hour. And that's being fair with the people. So, who do we call?
Mr. Manager?
Well, Counselor, I understand, and I know it was designated here as unanswered and non-responsive, as I understand, that's just the category.
I received a memo from you. You contacted the state agency.
Right, and we have been in touch with them verbally as well, and it's just getting them to get out there and put that sign up. We've been in touch with them again as recently as last week, I believe, on this matter, but we'll continue to hound them to put that up.
We have it on a low connector, and if someone gets a ticket, shame on them. But on that highway, it comes on to you that fast, and I know some people who received a $150 ticket, and they were totally irate over it, and they didn't see the sign, it was too late, and so forth. So, I mean, John Cooper could make the sign up in rapid.
Fortunately, Council, we're not able to put a sign on that stretch of roadway.
Well, I'm going to contact the local delegation to get that sign up. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if there's any further action. Councilor Martin.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I know it's still hot, but if I'd request a suspension of the rules to just bring up a brief matter about a traffic concern on Main Street.
Motion by Councilor Martin to suspend the rules, second by Councilor Mercia. All those in favor of suspension, please signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Chair recognizes Councilor Martin.
Thank you. I just got a call yesterday from a resident, and so I didn't have time to file a motion, didn't want to let it go another 2 weeks. I did have a brief discussion with the manager today about it, but to keep my colleagues updated. Main Street is not a typical Main Street. It's a small street that runs somewhat parallel to Tanner Street. And this is the portion of Main Street that I think is, if my bearings are correct, north of Lincoln Street, that kind of runs downhill toward Canada Street. So kind of a removed area of the city, but there are, a few residential homes there, long-term residents that know they live near an industrial area and really never complain about it. But there have been an increasing number of, I think, tow operators in that neighborhood. And most of the tow operators, exit down Canada and Tanner Street and avoid Main Street because it's kind of a crowded residential street. But there's been an increased frequency, I think, of truck traffic on that street. It is on a steep hill as well, and at least one resident had, a car break free from the tow truck damaged. The car was uninsured vehicle, so it's becoming a bigger problem. And so if we could do something about it and give some relief to those residents, that's the purpose of the motion, for the manager and his staff to take a look at it and let us know what can be done.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Before we adjourn, I just have a couple of announcements, if I could. We're beginning our summer schedule for June, July, August, and September. We're going to be meeting the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month. But I do want to just remind the viewing public that on Tuesday, June 1st at 5:30, we are having a public hearing to take up the ordinance amending Chapter 20 entitled Departments, and to also receive the city manager's proposed fiscal 2011 city budget. And then on June 8th, we will be having a public hearing on the proposed budget beginning at 5 p.m. here in the council chambers on June 8th. Yes, Council Coffey.
And yes, Mr. Mayor, and this weekend is Memorial Day weekend. There's ceremonies at the Ladd Whitney Monument at 10:15. The Lowell Council of Veterans will be conducting those services, but the services all weekend. And I employ my colleagues to attend those services. Those veterans gave their time and sacrificed many, many things. It won't hurt us to spend a couple of hours reflecting and saying a prayer for them.
Thank you, Council Coffey. Council Elliott.
Mayor, just back to June 1st, we're just going to be accepting the budget, and then it has to be advertised, so there won't,
We're going to be receiving.
receiving it. Okay.
Maybe accepting.
So we'll be receiving
Correct,
the
on June
report,
1st.
and it's going to be advertised, so there won't be any discussion
No,
that night.
that's correct.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Just wanted to
Thank
let
you.
the people at home know not to come down.
Correct. June
It'll be
8th,
the June
June
8th
8th,
at
correct.
5 o'clock. Okay.
Correct, yes, thank you. Anything else? Motion to adjourn by Council Elliott, seconded by Council Broderick. Move adjournment. Thank you.